So far, I have spoken about Circus Baby in great detail, Funtime Freddy in his own video, and Funtime Foxy in an admittedly brief segment of the Mangle video. But there is one final member of the Circus Baby Funtime band who I have not brushed upon, and that would be Ballora the Ballerina. First introduced in Sister Location and having little mainline relevance of her own after that, but quite a few spin-off appearances, Ballora still became a popular character, though largely less because of what she is and more because of a particular theory surrounding her. Today we will be going into everything about Ballora, who she is, her appearances, and this theory. For starters, Ballora was one of the 4 animatronics built by Afton for Circus Baby's band. Like her bandmates, while she appears to simply be an advanced animatronic, she hides a deadly secret underneath her plates. She is built and programmed to assist in the kidnapping of children, though unlike Baby and Freddy, who are built with storage tanks and are thus the ones directly responsible for taking the children, Ballora plays defense. She is built with an audio activation sensor, which we can assume makes her sensitive to sound and triggers her to turn on. She has a deter and misdirect mechanic. Deter meaning to prevent, or get in the way of, which could have been used to keep away other witnesses, children and adults alike, while Baby and Freddy grabbed their chosen child. This is backed up by the fact that Baby has remote access to activate this, something that becomes a little more relevant in the later nights of Sister Location. Ballora's last 2 features are for balance and stability and a collision sensor, which basically seems to be useful in keeping her upright and spinning. Indeed, we do see her spinning in the second night of Sister Location. However, at one point Scott mentioned that Ballora actually moves around by crawling like a spider once she gets off her track. Unfortunately, this is not shown in Sister Location, as the only time she is shown moving is spinning. In fact, it wasn't until Fnaf AR, years later, that we saw this crawling Ballora. See, there's this catch about Ballora. Behind that pretty face is a pretty terrifying monster. Though she is styled to be the most human, though she is elegant and poised, this doesn't make her any more approachable. In fact, Ballora leans much more into Uncanny Valley than any of her bandmates, always standing out like an uncomfortable mannequin more than a beautiful ballerina. Ballora's personality is admittedly not much to write home about. That is, it isn't too fleshed out throughout any of the games. We'll get into Sister Location shortly, but with Baby being such an unreliable narrator, we don't know too much about Ballora except what she says for herself, in which she's calm and collected, and as I said before, elegant. She seems to enjoy singing at least, and the songs she sings are both melancholy and can also be threatening.
All I do is dance alone, but now I hear your flesh and bone. I roam these halls alone all day, but now you're here, friend and prey.
Ultimate Custom Night throws in a few more saucy lines like this one.
Admit it, you wanted to let me in.
But it doesn't really expand her character much. And due to an issue with Fnaf AR, we didn't get new voice lines for her. I'll get into that later. Another thing that I should bring up are the Minireenas. The Minireenas are Ballora's little backup dancers and seem to kind of stand in as her lackeys as well. They are always seen on stage with her. But let's take a step back and go through the games one at a time. Ballora's introduction is in Sister Location, where she is, again, one of Baby's bandmates. You encounter her on night 2 when you have to venture through the Ballora Gallery to reach the breaker room. She is singing when you do, but stops to briefly acknowledge that someone is there before going silent. While you're crossing the room, you will see a small cutscene of Ballora crossing in front of you, but that doesn't actually show where she actually is. She's actually somewhere in the room, and the more noise that you make, the more of a target you make yourself. If you make too much noise, she finds you and jump scares you, and that's game over. Ballora's next appearance is on night 4 when you are trapped in the scooping room. Ballora is brought in for repairs and is scooped before our very eyes, after which the Minireenas come into the room and climb into the suit we're trapped in. While Ballora seems to be in control of the Minireenas, the amount of control Baby has on the situation makes it unclear if she's pulling the strings or if they're working together. Something that is even more unclear when you take in that deter and misdirect program and the fact that Baby herself is the one who has control over it. This comes back around in Night 5 when Baby forewarns the player that an enraged Ballora is stalking him. This, of course, is a lie, as it is Innard and Baby is already a part of them. It does raise questions to whether or not Baby is still using that control on Ballora to command Innard, but we don't have an answer to that. Either way, Baby is in control. Between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator, Baby's band seems to mutually agree that she needs to be gone and kicks her out of the band. Literally. At this point, Funtime Freddy takes over control of the body, and while Ballora's in there, the new form has none of her likeness or her personality. Technically, that's when Ballora's story ends as she burns in the fire. However, like we learned in the Mangle video, characters can still get a second wind even though their story is over. And Ballora featured as a character in quite a few spin-offs, so let's go through them. Ballora was yet another character in Ultimate Custom Night. This was where she got that sultry edge to her lines, but none of them really revealed more than that. Her gimmick was that she came down the hallway, so you would have to listen to her approaching music and shut the doors. Unfortunately, Ballora had no additional animations either. But then Fnaf AR came out and we got the spider animation. It is very creepy, and it's the first time I think that Ballora's ever really truly been scary. Shame we couldn't see it in Sister Location or Help Wanted, which she unfortunately didn't have an appearance in, but at least it's in here. And the way they show it off is actually rather impressive. While she's shown to be dancing in the workshop, when it actually gets to the gameplay, she's crawling around. Ballora's mechanics are complicated. You have to stay quiet and slowly turn to not face her, though you can't see her and you have to go off of a noise meter. Minireenas occasionally climb up your screen, so you have to shake them off and collect them without making too much noise. Once you do this enough time, Ballora charges and is instantly tased, and you win. Ballora got 2 skins during her time in Fnaf AR, and cool enough, they each have their own unique dance patterns. She was also featured as a character in the Fnaf AR DLC, the $20 expansion pack released before Fnaf AR was possibly abandoned. She accompanies ringleader Foxy and Great Escape Golden Freddy as the threats you may encounter. Now let's get into the voice. So Michella Moss, the voice of Ballora, was contacted by Illumix to do voice lines for Ballora. Then they promptly cut contact with her without word and released Ballora without a voice. I've seen people defend this because Ballora has a noise-based mechanic, so she shouldn't talk. But that's extremely unprofessional behavior for a company. Imagine if someone reached out to you to do a job, and then just never responded ever again. If they were really not in need of her services anymore, then they should have told her. But the biggest disappointment of this being that, unlike Mangle, who got a really neat piece of characterization from lines added late in life, Ballora did not. So other than a few very thin context clues, Ballora's personality is still on the light side. Ballora had 2 cameos in Security Breach. One is an arcade cabinet, and the other is a possible reference in the blue-haired and purple-clothed nanny staff bots, which were cut from the game, except for the one in the post-it note room. And this seems as good a time as any to discuss the elephant in the room. And this is when my history lesson on Ballora becomes a hot take. So, the most popular theory surrounding Ballora is about her connection with the Aftons and how she is possessed by William Afton's wife. I don't have a problem with this theory, but there is absolutely no basis for it. I think the theory just spawned from the fact that Ballora looks so humanoid, because there's pretty much nothing else to suggest this until Security Breach, but I'll get into that in a minute. We pretty much have nothing on William Afton's wife. We don't even have her name or even a real confirmation of her existence. The closest thing we have is possibly the Immortal and the Restless segments being a reference to her. Vlad wears a purple suit and is a negligent father. Clara is blonde, which could explain where Lizzie gets her hair color when her father and brother's brunette. The problem is, there's no real confirmation on this. Even if this is enough to go off of, her voice actress isn't even the same as Ballora's, so that's not a good concrete lead. Someone mentioned that Michella Moss voicing Vanessa's therapist may be a link, since they discuss Vanessa's mother, who is speculated to actually be Mrs. Afton, and the backstory is totally fake. But considering that Kellen Goff voices Freddy and the daycare attendant, and they're not supposed to be the same character, I don't think that's enough to go off of. I know I used Vanessa sharing Baby's voice as a connection in her video, but that was on top of everything else. And now on to the quote-unquote confirmation by SB. It's kind of. The Ballora is Mrs. Afton theory existed for years with no evidence before this. And then they have the nanny bot in the post-it room who looks like Ballora filling in for Mrs. Afton. That isn't really a confirmation. I think this is more of either a retroactive confirmation thing, like it was such a popular theory that either they were adding some credence to it, baiting it, or using this theory to add contextual hinting. It's hard to tell, really. Now, the reason I'm saying this isn't to put down people's headcanons. I think headcanons are great, and I can see where they might come to this assumption. I just wanted to clear up that as far as Fnaf has told us, this is likely not the case. And if it is, wow, that's a pretty big waste of a character, isn't it? Now time to move on to the books. Shockingly, Ballora does not appear in the fourth closet. But Ballora has an impressive run of stories in Fazbear Frights and Tales of the Pizzaplex. She doesn't tend to have any unique characterization, but she is used in a few stories. Though the one she truly features in is Dance With Me. Heavily inspired by They Live, a movie about seeing aliens hidden in plain sight with a pair of special sunglasses, a young woman steals a goodie bag and can see a Ballora apparition whenever she looks through a pair of novelty glasses. She spins closer and closer until the woman returns the goods to the family she stole them from. The end. It's a passable story. My only problem is that Ballora herself could really be replaced with anyone. There's no reason this should be her, and she doesn't do anything uniquely scary, and it really doesn't utilize the animatronic for the gimmick. Someday I might talk about this one again, but moving on for now. Ballora's next big story is in Tales of the Pizzaplex's Kleptrophobia. A technician climbs through a vertical pipe maze in the basement that shrinks the more you get down into it. Suspend your disbelief for this one, folks. I had less questions about the mystery of Amigara Fault. Ballora, or a torso of one, helps people down the maze. Except her help is just dragging people through, so she ends up crushing the technician. While Ballora is an animatronic marketed towards fitness as revealed in Sister Location, her addition here is a lot like in Dance With Me. It's not tailored for her, she's just shoved in because she's an animatronic on the list. And the location itself, instead of being one actually in the Pizzaplex, is one that's come up with on a whim. The method of the attraction doesn't make much sense because it is only built to service the story, if you get my drift. Ballora makes an appearance in the Minireenas story, Room for One More, though not as a character, but in a dream had by the main character. I think that's the story where her makeup is described to be wrong, but that might have also been Dance With Me. And that's it. It doesn't seem like a lot, but consider this. Foxy only had one starring story, and arguably one cameo through the Foxy plush in Lonely Freddy. Having two featured stories and a cameo is quite sizable. Now, I swear there is another story featuring Ballora, but I can't remember nor find it, so let's assume that there may be, and I'll remember it only after I post the video. My only issue with these cameos is that they reflect the state of Ballora, and Fazbear Frights as a whole. Fazbear Frights uses animatronics, when they use animatronics, as props, with their behavior influenced more with personality traits than actual mechanics, save a few rare exceptions. But in Ballora's case, what makes her so scary is what she does and how she looks, not how she acts. So in these stories, she tends to act like a plank of wood. But I digress. Now, after all this, you may assume that I don't like Ballora. On the contrary, I do. I just think that Ballora is at her best when she's crawling around on all fours like a mechanical house spider, when her face splits open, when she makes inhuman roars and breathing noises. And that's because the other side of Ballora, the sultry singer, is much less exciting. Though that could very well be because her character lacked that pop that characters like Baby and Freddy had. We just don't know enough about Ballora to really give her full characterization. She's kind of like the reverse to Funtime Freddy, actually. Funtime Freddy isn't visually scary. He pulls his charisma and discomfort factor all from his voice alone. While Ballora's voice is lovely, it is what she has to say that isn't too enthralling. Which doesn't matter once her face splits open. Ballora could very easily be the scariest Funtime when it comes to looks and movements alone. From her constant closed eyes to the uncanniness of how human she looks against how animalistic she moves. Ballora's a diamond amongst the rough, that's for sure. And if she is William's wife, well, rest in peace, Mama Afton.